live on YouTube. Let's see if it will do it on both. If it doesn't, then we might have to pick one from now. On my end, it's saying preparing live stream.
For those of you that are already watching us on Facebook, this is the behind the scenes look of technology around doing a visual podcast.
Yes.
We're still trying to figure this out.
We're still trying to figure it out.
Live on YouTube. Let's see if it will do it on both. If it doesn't, then we might have to pick one from now.
I hear you talking, but your lips aren't moving. I didn't know you're a ventriloquist.
On my end, it's saying preparing. I got hidden talent.
That is awesome.
This is the behind the scenes look of technology around doing a visual podcast.
There you go.
That was like the Chinese dubbed over version.
So I'm pretty sure it doesn't allow you on both, because as soon as I pressed YouTube, it stopped the Facebook.
Well, we will just stick with Facebook. That's totally fine.
Well, right now it's on YouTube, so pick one.
Oh, whichever you want it to be. It says Facebook up here on the top of mine, but whatever. It doesn't.
Okay,
doesn't
we're gonna post the recording afterwards, but we are on. You're on, Sherry.
Perfect. What's up, Coaching Nation? So excited to see you again for another episode of the Coach's Journey. I'm Dr. Sherry Llewellyn with our co-host Faisal Ansan, and we have an amazing guest for you guys today. Her name is Monica Fawn. You are going to fall in love with her. She is a brand coach and designer. Now, if you're wondering, what is a brand coach and a designer? Because when I hear those two things together, I think of Coach purses, right? Like coach and designer. She does not sell Coach purses and wallets. She actually does something far more valuable for you guys as a coach and in your journey. So we're going to dive way deep into that. There's going to be a tremendous amount of value you're going to get from her during our time together. But first, we're going to jump into some wins for the week that we've each had, because we love starting out any sort of conversation, focusing on what's going right and the things that we're learning and how we're building momentum. So who wants to go first?
I'll go first.
All right.
Within the past week, sold my house or my condo and moved in with my fiance. So super big wins.
Wow. Yay!
It's been fun.
And in this real estate market, I'm sure you probably got a pretty penny for your condo.
Yes, ready to reinvest next year in a home. But with the market jumping up, yay, mine jumped up. But what we're trying to buy is like way up here now. So this is the first day, and then the next one's going to hurt. Like this one feels good, and the next one will be like, okay, that's fine. Take it all back.
Yeah. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Faisal.
Yeah, I'll share a personal win. So I've been, my daughter, who's 5 years old, she just started going to school and just driving her. I've been driving for a while because I do this from home. So it's a good change to have driving started again, because I like driving. But just having that time in the morning with her and connecting with her throughout, and she's just chatty it can be, like her. So we get to spend a lot of time talking and connecting. So that's been a really cool transition for me every morning. So yeah, that's a win for me.
That's awesome. So for me, I would say one of my big wins is my husband and I just came back from a really incredible internet marketing conference. It was called Funnel Hackers Live. This is about the fourth one I've been to. But given where my business is right now and what my husband and I are planning on doing over this next year, this was like the perfect moment for us to really be able to learn together. He's never been to one of these with me before because we have 4 kids, and it's like, who's going to watch the kids? And everything just worked out this time to where he could come with. So not only am I on fire, he's on fire too. And that makes it so much more powerful. So we're super excited for that.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah. So awesome. Everybody, you guys have amazing wins.
Yeah.
I can see the energy.
And I do recommend, like, those who are watching at this time, think about your wins right now, because there's a reason why we're sharing, because a lot of times we forget. We go through all these problem solving periods and we forget that we have a lot of great things happening in our life. That doesn't stop you problem solving, because that's your mind as an entrepreneur, as a coach, but it allows you to notice what's important. And as a coach, you know that.
Yeah, absolutely. Without that recognition, we can start to feel like we're not making traction and we kind of get burnt out.
Mm-hmm.
So amazing. So our sponsor for the Coach's Journey podcast is this right here. Coaching Mastery Community. Coaching Mastery Community, we are a virtual community designed to serve and support coaches as they move in their journey. We have a community full of amazing, inspired, ambitious coaches. We, as collectively, we are learning how to be better coaches. We are learning how to do better in business. So it's both sides. I know, Faisal, you get so excited and jazzed every time we talk about the Coaching Mastery community and the impact it's had on you. You want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things, and for me, I actually understood the value of the community, especially now, because our mission is very similar, coaching an influencer path. And the more I've connected with other coaches, the more I've realized not only the significance of what we're doing here, because when we're alone at home and trying to do this, it doesn't feel like we're making a difference a lot of times, other than those times when our clientele.
He's breaking out.
Tells us once in a while, but once we're each other, what's happening is we understand the impact that we're creating, the ripple effect that we're creating in the world, and helping each other rise up. And that's really powerful to me. And that's not only powerful, but it's essential for our growth as coaches, but also the greater coaching community. Oh, you're muted, Dr. Sherry.
I sure am. All right, amazing. So let's dive into talking with Monica. So Monica, if you just want to kind of give us a sense of what it is that you do and how that intersects with the coaching community, and then we'll just kind of take it from there and see where we go.
Well, so I had originally started off more of a just logo designer and website designer. So that means just creating the art, the graphics, assembling design elements to make something aesthetically pleasing. But as soon as I started my own business, I realized, okay, what do I put on my own website? So I started taking the business courses, the marketing, I started learning copywriting because I needed to clearly communicate what it was that I did so that I could get clients. But every single one of my clients needed the exact same thing. Like I could build a website, but it doesn't matter what it looks like if it doesn't clearly communicate what it is that they do in a way that they stand apart in their industry, but also so that those people who are the perfect fit for them know that they're the perfect fit. And so that's super, super important for coaches. I think maybe even more so, I don't want to say that, but even stronger than some things like product-based businesses sometimes, because we are working on a personal level with people. So as I just jumped into like, oh, graphic design fulfills like these two pieces of me, this strategic side and this artistic side. I had been in a marketing office for an outdoor shopping center doing like admin and marketing. And then I had my art and jewelry on the side. So I had them separated. And then I found the one thing that kind of put them together, but instantly I knew that it was more than just the design. And that's actually like the secret to the success. If people hire me because they want a pretty looking website, but pretty and professional websites fail every single day. And it's because pretty can just become boring. It starts looking like everyone else's, or it doesn't engage someone. It just looks nice. And then the problem and solution for professional sites, because that's about the word that 95% of my clients say to me, I need a more professional website. But if we go too professional, it becomes boring. It's not engaging. And again, we lose that personal side. So it needs to be personal and professional, not looking bigger or going like too stock, too corporate. So that's why pretty and professional can fail in website design and brands. So that's where kind of the brand coaching and brand consulting comes in. We start looking at what is the message, what is the why, how do they serve, what are the problems their ideal clients and customers are having. And then why are you a good fit to solve those problems for these particular people? And all of that can be communicated visually, but also needs to be communicated verbally. Branding is communication on a subliminal, visual, emotional level. And especially, I think for coaches, that's really hard to articulate. And it's really hard to show visuals of this intangible thing it is that we do.
Yeah, I love that, and I've actually been Monica's client, and she realized my pain pretty fast. Is like, I've been in this business for over 5 years, and I haven't been able to communicate what I want to communicate with my clients. Most people, unless they've worked with me or they've had a session or they've been in one of my group sessions, they don't know what I do from what I share in terms of my posts, in terms of, so how do I bridge that gap? And I want to go into that in a bit later, but Monica, I want you to elaborate a little bit on your journey, because you have a really powerful journey that you've taken of your own personal growth, which connects with your message as well in your brand around authenticity. So do you want to kind of share a little bit about that? Because I think coaches will relate a lot with that.
Yeah, I believe that our personal development is interchangeable with our professional development. Our businesses can be held back by our lack of personal development. And sometimes the professional development can be drawn forward or pulls our personal development forward. So I think they're interchangeable. And especially when we have these types of businesses as freelancers, solopreneurs, authors, coaches, general entrepreneurs, we need to personally develop in order for the business to continue to succeed. And the business opens gateways for us to develop personally, I think, faster and in different ways if we didn't have our businesses. So I was super shy, very like more introverted, super shy. And I liked my art and jewelry, but I was terrified even of going to shows and selling my art and jewelry. I was just as terrified of getting compliments because I was awkward and didn't know how to handle them as much as I was just receiving the criticism. So in all the times that there's about 5 times in my life where why don't you try graphic design had been dropped on me through high school and my young adulthood. And I instantly was like, no, I tried this AutoCAD program once and I hated it. I'm not good with computers. And I couldn't handle that client relationship of them critiquing or trying to make something that they like. It was too much confrontation for me. And so I shut it down because personally, I wasn't developed enough to handle that type of working with someone collaboratively. I was just terrified of confrontation. So I felt like everything would be a confrontation. As I slowly got more comfortable with that through my art, and then already started doing things that were graphic design and marketing related in my business, it slowly started bridging that gap for me. So many times people feel like they can't do something yet. So I think most of the time when people start off on the coach's journey, they at least believe they have the skill set to get started. Like they have that belief, maybe they've jumped that hurdle, but getting there, they've probably had some pressure moments where they're like, I'm not good enough. I can't do this. And so when they're starting this journey, they have that little bit of belief, and that will grow exponentially based on the experience they get. So that was how a little bit it was for my own story, but I worked in the office. I wanted to work remotely. I wanted to have the time and money freedom, not be limited by my office hours or my office, increase of like 30 cents a year raise. I'm sorry, like, even if I live in a shack or if I only make my ends meet, like, I just want to be free, And so I did make that leap after seeing a Facebook ad. So Facebook ads can be life-changing, everyone. They really
Thanks for
can.
that reminder.
Oh, yeah. So when you're like, oh, nobody's seeing my thing, or it was for maybe a $300 course, and like, oh, anyone can be a logo and website designer. And then I was like, oh, actually, I already know the design programs and I'm an artist. So if anyone can do it, maybe it just opened up that possibility of belief. If anyone could do this, and I already know the programs and I'm an artist, and I'm like, maybe I'll be successful in this. And that was like my security blanket to even get started. I did it on the side. I'd work till like midnight, but within 5 months, I was able to quit my office job and do this full time. And then that's where everything else kicked in of like, this isn't just creating a logo and a website. Like, this is I signed up for a whopper of responsibility and alternate things I need to learn. in order to actually really support my clients. But in our first years of working in our industry, we think that we know what our clients want. And I even did those exercises. Go pull your audience, go pull, potential clients and ask them, what are their struggles? What do they want? And people, I think, especially with coaching, they might approach us for a certain thing or think they want something. But as soon as you start working with them, the real limiting beliefs, the real problems start coming out, the things that are really holding them back. And so after working with clients for over 2 years, I started realizing that many of them were having similar feelings I was. As soon as I wanted to scale my business, I was following all the marketing gurus. I'd read a new book, I'd do a new seminar, and I'd try to put these things into practice. But I felt like, and many of my clients feel like, they have to be something they're not in order to market and run their business. And when people come to me to create a brand, they're like, I want a professional brand. And so they'll bring me inspiration boards of all these other people. Maybe they're their competitors, or sometimes just somebody who's killing it in business, and they want to model them. Now, that's something that we can do to learn, but when it comes to branding, we shouldn't necessarily be modeling anything that doesn't already resonate with us, our message and our core, because everyone feels like they need to be better than so-and-so to make it. And it's actually not the case. You need to be different, and we're already different. So this is where this authenticity piece really started tying into how I approached my business, because there's so many times I just felt like I wanted to quit or give up, or this isn't for me. Every time I tried to market my business, I'd get on social media, I would feel like ick, things wouldn't work. I'd get frustrated and just want to quit. And over again, it's like, I just keep feeling like I have to be something I'm not. Like, I don't feel like I can be me to succeed, but we actually can. It's just that when we try to show up and just navigate all these things of what we should do mixed in with what we want to do, it gets a confusing message. So what happens when people come to me for website design and branding is that we need to get to the core of their own strengths and what makes them unique. It's called a USP. It's your unique selling point. And it's something that if you find what your unique selling point is, and you've included that and authentic branding, then you are much less likely, I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, but you're not going to get that burnout and lose that passion as much. Because the more and more we feel like we show up inauthentically, it just shuts down our creativity, and we start doing that loop of freaking out.
You said a lot of stuff right now. And I mean, there are so many gold nuggets through all of that. One that sticks out in my mind that you just said is, it's not about being better, it's about being different.
Mm-hmm.
Because I see that thought running through my own brain. I've seen it in other entrepreneurs that I don't have 25 years of experience. How am I ever going to compete against so-and-so in the marketplace? So can you talk a little bit more about how to start thinking and shifting our mind from trying to be better than and rather be different?
That shift is difficult to pinpoint based on my own experience and other parts of my clients. When we go through the branding process, I can see the specific areas based off of the inspiration they give me and their competition where they might feel like they need to model someone. But when I do certain personality assessments and talk to them a bit more about their why and their own personal struggles, because that I think definitely translates into coaching and where people can feel our connection points, because we can't create a story, especially within coaching. We'll keep this mostly in the coaching realm. In these other people, these other coaches who might be killing it, you do not have their experiences. And that's a good thing, because there's a lot of people who have had difficulties in areas that this person has not had. And therefore, they don't resonate with this person, or their personality type might be too soft for some people, not motivating enough, or they might be too high energy and they turn people off. So when we feel, when we feel heartfelt and are passionate about what it is we're speaking about and how we connect with people, it does increase how many connections we make, essentially, and that we are connecting with the right people. So to uncover essentially what makes you different, it's really hard for us to see. I like to use the analogy of like we are all our own galaxies. We have all these different parts and elements inside of us, and they're very similar to other people's elements, but they're absolutely arranged in a different way. And when we look out in the sky, we can see the shapes of all the other galaxies. We can understand what makes everyone else different. But because we are so inside our own galaxy, we can't see the things that make us different and unique because we live them. And sometimes we project that on other people, assuming people already know everything we know, or that what we have isn't unique or special, that everyone has this. But really, your ordinary is extraordinary. And it takes an outside perspective to help you uncover that and see it for yourself sometimes. So that's where brand coaching and brand consulting can come in. Sometimes there's some really great exercises you can do. I have a couple I do with my clients. But in someone looking at that and saying, like, see how this is pointing out how everyone you've met, there's an exercise that I like to have people do, and that's to reach out to past clients, maybe coworkers, friends, and family, and to ask them 3 questions about your strengths, about what stands out about your personality, that what seems uniquely you. And it's crazy how in these different environments, all these people will have very similar language to describe you. And it might be something you've been intentional about. And it might be something you're like, really, it comes across that way, or people see that about me. And I think people love that exercise a lot.
I love that.
I can attest to that exercise. You made me go through that.
Yeah. How did that work for you, Faisal?
That was a really powerful exercise. And actually, I'm thinking about incorporating that into my coaching, just to get people to see a different perspective on them. Because I mean, I don't want people telling me good or bad things about because a lot of us are not ready to hear a lot of things, positive or negative. And because she made it into a challenge, it's kind of an exercise. Okay, she's like, you have to do this. I didn't have a choice in the matter. So I'm like, okay, if I have to do this, I send it out to everybody. Out of everybody I sent out, probably I think I got 12, 13, 14 responses from family, friends, team members, coworkers, all sorts of people. And like she said, there are patterns that emerge in how people see you and how people perceive you. And then that also connects with how you probably see yourself, but you haven't made the connection yet. And it's really cool once you start to see it. Oh, I'm not crazy. I am projecting those things. I am sharing those things in the world. That's why they're feeling and seeing that. And that becomes not only as a point of, hey, okay, maybe I need to disseminate more of that message. And also it gives you the confidence to know that, okay, that's who I am. There's a confidence piece that sets in there. And for me, it was a hugely emotional experience because I was like, holy shoot, these people really think these things about me. And some were very detailed and they're like, oh, this is what I feel when I think of you. This is what and it was really cool. So yeah, thank you, Monica, for that exercise. And every time I think about it, I literally feel it in my whole body because I remember the words that people share, especially some people that I care about a lot.
Wow.
And that's the hard part, because when we try to fill out a survey like that for ourselves, what makes you, what are your personality traits? We're going through this inner turmoil of the person we're trying to become, what it is we're trying to learn. We're very hard on ourselves. Oh my gosh, I talk too much. I do this. And so we focus on those things that doesn't come across to other people. And there's that saying where I wish, you could see yourself as I see you. For loved ones and all these things, it's if we could see ourselves how others see us, we would realize that we are more consistent than we think, that there is something that makes us uniquely us and how that makes us different. I mean, we were born different. It's very hard for us to see that.
And I think another aspect to this, because a lot of what we're talking about is very much about influence, because who we are and how we interact with the world is how we influence the world one way or another. And so I'm imagining doing this and then maybe finding out also some things of ooh, I didn't realize I was putting that across, and finding out that what I feel on the inside isn't coming across to the other person. One of the most pivotal moments in my life where I recognized this was in my grad school, when I was getting my doctorate, I was very quiet usually. I'm a lot more introverted than extroverted. And because I was quiet and I found that my values differed greatly from the folks around me. They were just, they would party and stuff on the weekends, and that wasn't me. And so I had this glimpse that they saw me as like stuck up and felt like I was better than them. And that was not at all the case. I didn't think that way. It's just, and so I remember like getting that feedback, realizing how I was coming across to other people. And that gave me all the power in the world to decide what I was going to do with that information. And, did I want to continue with that perspective that people had of me, or did I want to try to intentionally change it to be more authentic with what I felt on the inside? So I think, so sometimes the actions and how people perceive us can be super authentic to who we are, but I think there can also be this disconnect. Mm-hmm. And that self-awareness and insight that you can get by asking people, I think is so powerful. So I love this idea.
Yeah. And that's the thing with branding too. That's really hard because sometimes we feel like we're being super clear, or, oh yeah, this makes sense. And when we're in it, trying to create it and DIY it, we're like, this makes sense to me. And then you'll come on a site and somebody be like, what is it that you do? And there was an example in my early years. I mean, it is good to get outside feedback. Now I've navigated and done this enough where I can start catching these things. But there was a client that I had, and we were doing a banner. We were using the product. It was these beautiful cupcake kits, but we were using it with the cupcakes and the banner and the language and everything. They had family members come and be like, oh, I didn't know you're starting a bakery. We're like, oh no, it's like kids. Like, oh my gosh, we got so far. Site was almost ready to be launched. And it's like, okay, new banner image, change the language. But it's hard because when I get so close to the project sometimes too, where we get so close in, we're like, oh, we think it makes sense, but we need that outside perspective of like, sometimes no matter how clearly we think we make something, someone's interaction with it, they might pick up on like the little thing here when there's a huge sign here. And I think with coaching, that can be really difficult because they'll pick up a few words and then their train of thought starts on something and it will continue on this other path of this little tiny thing that might hang them up and start thinking this is something else. And then they're going to read everything and see everything after that with that filter that they've just suddenly picked up, thinking it now relates to how it was thinking this way. So as you land on a website page, super important, that banner section, the headline, and the first paragraph has to be very clear. What is this? How does this help you? Like, so then we can take that frame and then we can get into the details and the testimonials. But if you saw something and went off on a wrong track and saw other people's testimonials, you're like, is this the theme park or what? Like, it could be anything. Like, who knows what you could just grab and think on it. So communication is something that is not easy to do for any industry. No matter how long you've been writing, as soon as it comes to your own stuff, it can be difficult.
Yeah, I love that, and my experience as I went through, and I'll relay that because as I work with Monica one-on-one, one of the things that in her genius way she's figured out, and I don't think it's just personally with me, but she just started as, and I don't even think she recognized that she was coaching me, but she was. And then I had to point that out, like, you're literally doing what we do. So she would get on a call and get me to just ask me some questions about like, what am I trying to do here? How am I trying to help my clients? And she's recording that. And then she's turned it, like she took parts of that and put it into the videos that she created, the trailers that she created, which I'm actually in the process of kind of launching it fully. I've blocked out like 5 hours, I think it's next week, to kind of go through the whole thing, because unless I block it out, it's not going to happen at this point. So as I did that, so a couple of things came out, like the messaging that the copy that she put on my website and the videos and trailers that she created, it was my words that I was authentically sharing in that moment as she was asking me. And there were stories in there were a lot of emotions, there was a lot of depth, there was a lot of struggle. And that as everything started coming out and we've gone to the final versions of the website, it was literally what I felt in my heart and how I wanted to connect with people. And a lot of times now, as I look back, I hesitated in those areas because I'm like, I don't know if people are ready to hear that stuff. So I would change into the training mode more, which is the very comfort area where you can teach a bunch of stuff, which a lot of coaches will know because they've studied so much. But then you're not sharing struggles. You're not sharing your emotions. You're not sharing your wins. You're not sharing how you've supported others. You're not sharing the impact that has been created in your life and other people's life. You're not sharing those stories that connect you to people. And essentially with that, the copy and the video, as I've gone through this process with Monica, is that people need to see you. And once they do, they get connected to you. And I'll share this one other thing. So as I've gone through this process, one of the things that has given me more of an openness is that the way I share it is much like how I shared it with Monica now, because now I have a frame of reference. Oh, this is what I'm meant to do. So I went on this podcast. And recently I got somebody reached out to me to do a strategy session, and he literally mentioned that, oh, I listened to another coach who was on the podcast and I felt motivated. And then they kept referring back to the podcast episode I was on. And then when they listened to that one, he's like, when I listened to that one, I was moved. And then I went back and I'm like, what was he moved by? And the whole thing was around like my struggle and how it affected me and how I've impacted others with that struggle and with that learning and growth experience. Yeah, there were teaching moments and other things, but I had to be open enough and vulnerable enough to share all that. And there had to be that openness of the story. And it's so moved and motivated, there's a huge difference. And that's why he probably felt motivated to reach out to me. And I'll give you a caveat on that. So he's a real estate investor. The other coach he listened to, that was a real estate investor. I'm not. I'm just a coach. He chose to come to me for that reason. And that doesn't make me better or worse than the other coach. It just means that the client or the potential client felt more connected to my message because I was much more open in the process. But I wouldn't have done that. I've been on other podcasts. I've kind of held back some of those things before. But as soon as you go on that one episode, I'm like, well, I didn't know it was going to be emotional in the first 30 seconds of the podcast.
Yeah. I think that's a great example of how you are different.
Yeah.
It's not about being better necessarily than somebody else, but it's about that differentiation. And you were different than that other guest.
And that's what connected with the client. Yeah. And I don't even, like, when I went through the thing, I know this other coach, I could see that this other coach would be able to help him. Mm-hmm. But there's something that in my story connected with him. And as I read through the questionnaire, I'm like, oh, these are the areas he aspires. And when my story, it connects with him. Mm-hmm. And that was really cool.
And if you had approached that by trying to be better than someone, then all of that, I guess, like the heartfelt stuff, all of that emotionally tying stuff kind of gets turned off. Like we get too much into our brain and overthinking things, and then we're filtering, and then we're trying to create and regurgitate and impress. And that's when people start like shutting down, and we can feel it in a message when somebody's talking. I listened to a podcast recently, Caffeine for the Soul. I love that one. But this episode, he said heartfelt versus BS. And it was, I think he was another coach, but was teaching a class of kids. And he's like, oh, of course, kids should be able to sit and listen to me for an hour. And goes in 30 seconds, lost the kids. And so he tried practicing and learning like how to retain kids' attention. And it's the same for children and adults. What he found, he would record the sessions with the kids. What he found is the kids increased their length of span that they would sit and listen to him without blinking, full attention, up to 30 minutes. And what was happening in those minutes was that he was sharing something really personal and heartfelt. As soon as he went into teaching mode, they tune out. Now, it doesn't mean like that's what we're searching for. clients and customers are looking for a solution. They're looking for to learn. They know that they need to learn and do something different to get to the next level. But to retain attention is something that needs to come heartfelt from this vulnerability. And I think especially for coaches, as Faisal pointed out, we are intimidated by getting into a relationship with someone and sharing this really deep personal stuff that's going on. And we think that we might be able to get away with like, oh, I'll just tell them I'm frustrated with this, I'm overworked, but it's going to come down to the really deep emotional stuff. And I think people know that they obviously need to be comfortable with that person. But when you lead by example, which Faisal reminded me, and that's why there's different copywriting frameworks that do this on purpose intentionally, is that you give and you open up first, and it helps others become comfortable with that. So he probably became comfortable and felt moved by you opening, but then you also created a space where he would feel comfortable in doing the same back because you had done it first.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what we also need to do on the website copy within the videos. It's not all about like, oh, me, though. And that's something we definitely need to learn in the copywriting. A lot of people, when I get a site that they've made and we're going to go do a rebrand refresh, it's instantly, we do this, I'm this, blah, blah, blah. We need to take that and flip it and talk about them. I'm very much completely sold and love the story brand method of like copywriting and marketing. And I think it's the best. I hope I work with, and I hope that all of my clients can adopt and learn and continue it after working with me. But in this, he makes it very clear that what we do naturally, and it's okay, is that we talk about like ourselves first. There's a pattern of what we need to describe to people to market. And this is one of the 3 areas that coaching and a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, and that's the copywriting. Our focus, we put the spotlight on ourselves instead of putting the spotlight on this other person. Every single person, as a survival instinct, asks, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Before we dedicate time, money, even the little bit of calories it's going to take to start reading the website, we need to know what's in it for us first. So if we say, oh, we're the #1 company who provides blankety blank, I'm off, I'm out. But if it's like, don't you feel blank blank, or isn't it a problem when you have, and it's like, oh, they're talking about me. So instantly my brain will listen up. I'm going to dedicate 5 more calories, 10 more minutes to like go through and how does this help me and serve me and take me where I want to go. It's kind of like that reticular activation system. If it's a fit for them, we want to activate that, and we need to use the language that the brain is scanning for to find the thing that's going to solve the problems that people have.
Very cool. Hey, Faisal, can I put you on the hot seat for a minute?
Yeah, of course.
I didn't say that. What did you, as you started working with Monica, what did you notice was your messaging pre-Monica? PM?
Okay.
I guess both is PM and yeah.
PM
anyway.
and AM.
There you go. What was what did you realize your messaging was getting across prior to working with her, that we were like, oh my gosh, like that's not it, or that's not fully it? Like what did you find?
So before, and this was something I shared with Monica as I started talking to her, I'm like, my biggest pain point here is that and this is the feedback I got from the people who I know and people who listen to me, and some of the feedback from fellow coaches, is that one, it was too generic, because I'm not a copywriter. I don't know how to write copy. I'm learning to. Just because I've understood that it's more around our stories, but I didn't know what that meant. And what I kept thinking it meant was, you have to say things in a clever way so it grabs people's attention. Maybe that might be part of it, but I kept putting generic things for one thing. And then my message was more around, and this is the interesting part, my message has always been more around self-awareness and going to the core, but I was never able to communicate that in the language that I like to use, because I felt like people wouldn't resonate with that. But and this is something I teach, and I don't know how I lost sight of this. And as I'm thinking about this, when I talk to my clients about communication, I stress on this, like probably every session, is that it's not the words. A lot of times it's the body language, it's the emotions, it's the tonality. All that matters much more. So when I would put my video out, my focus was a lot on the words. And I didn't know what the words were. I wasn't good at that part, but I was really good at the emotions. I was really good at the talking about my struggle. I was really good at asking those questions from them, but I never utilized that. So with Monica, what she did was she uncovered that stuff. So she asked me, well, what kind of question would you ask from your clients? What story would you really? And I had a lot of stories about myself and my clients that I've been able to help them through. And then, well, I think the first one she didn't record, and then she's like, oh, we have to record all of these, because she's like, we can use parts of these and what. So then what I realized, and as a caveat, I want to mention, so I still have to test out this process. Parts of it, I have tested it out with the webinar that I do. So the trailer that Monica created for me, I haven't even launched my full website. But the thing, as she kept creating these videos, as my message went on the website that she created, it kept feeling aligned with what I wanted to express. And that's the part, and coaches understand this in terms of congruence, alignment. I never felt aligned with what I was sharing. Like I kept saying self-awareness, but it was too generic. I felt like I was kind of talking on the surface, because that doesn't mean anything. But my messaging became, well, the only way you're going to connect to your potential and raise your performance is if you connect to your core. And here's how you connect with your core. And this is what I mean by core. And this is where I share the stories, is where I share all this stuff. So my messaging became more open. It became more about the stories that I share. It became more about the emotions that I share. It became more about the stories I share about my clients, rather than let me keep giving you training after training that won't mean anything, that you won't even pay attention to. Mm-hmm. And that was a big shift, because I resisted that for a while. I'm like, who wants to hear my stories? But actually, that's what they wanted to hear.
And Faisal, as you recognized how to be more authentic in your branding and in your videos and on your website, how do you think that translated into how you show up in your sessions and how the language that you use with your clients in session?
Yeah, so I think, and this is coaching is really, this is why I think coaching is really powerful. And what Monica did was really powerful, because I mean, it was there, but it wasn't amplified to the level that it was as I started working with Monica. Then I started noticing that my clients were doing the same exact thing. They were holding back in the way they would talk to, they would connect with their family, when they would connect with their team, when they would connect, because everything we're going to do, it's going to involve people. When they would connect with investors, they would stay on the surface and they would talk business. And we've heard this over and over, but nobody's going to trust you in business if they don't know who you are. And especially when I talk to real estate investors, who are going out there and meeting people who want to work with them on these deals, or coaches who want to, my other set of clients who want to connect with their clients, they're not going to do business with you unless you establish that trust. It doesn't exist. That trust is not going to get established unless you're vulnerable, because they're waiting for you to be vulnerable. You're waiting for them to be vulnerable. And I give this picture. So imagine these two tribes in the old times. They've never seen each other. Maybe they have seen each other, and they have these areas where they're collecting resources, but they're kind of scared of each other. And they know that they need to work with each other to kind of share these resources and trade with each other, but they might not know how to approach it, because instinctually they're afraid of them, because they know that other tribes could take over. They could take their resources, they could attack their tribe, all that stuff. So imagine these few people from one tribe, a few people from the other tribe. They have their spears with them, and they see each other, and they come in closer, and then there's one leader, and he or she has the wisdom to know that they're not going to put down their spears. And yeah, there's a risk here. If we put down the spears, we might get attacked. But what if that's what it takes to connect with them? and then one person puts it down, and then like, we're here in peace. And that's what inspires the other side. Oh, I feel safe enough that I can let the guards down. Without that, I don't think we can connect with human beings, because it's hardwired into us to be protective. Our mind is going to protect us. So how do we hope to connect with people? How do we hope to connect with our clients? How do we hope to connect with collaborators if we haven't put down our spears, our guards? And guards in this age looks like, oh, this is what I can teach you. This is what I can do for you. This is what my business is about, which clicks everything off, like Monica shared. But openness might be, hey, I've struggled in these areas too. And this is why this is important to me. And that's the truth for most coaches who are passionate about what they're doing. The reason they're doing this is because they struggled in this area, as Monica shared in her journey. The reason I'm doing this because I struggled with this tremendously. I never understood my own potential. I never understood my own power inside of me. And the more and this is the other side, the more I've helped people connect with that, the more I've been able to connect with that too. And this is why it takes courage, and it's hard. It's not easy. This is why it requires you to do the inner work. Yeah, you're going to go out there and share all these stories, and there's a possibility that people are going to judge you. There's a possibility that people are going to crap on you. There's a possibility that people are going to do all that stuff. But that's actually a very small possibility. There's a bigger possibility that you're going to inspire somebody. There's a bigger possibility that you're going to connect with someone. And I want to connect this to the bigger picture here. And it came up before as Monica was sharing that the world that we're in, it's become too intellectual, too mental for the human experience. And this is a product of a few decades of, hey, what you can do is on the intellectual realm, which is, and there's some truth to that, because what happened was academics, what happened was intellectual awareness in the past few centuries have moved, especially the Western world, forward materially, which means we've developed a lot of technology, we've developed a lot of ways, tools to increase the quality, to make the quality of life better externally. But then guess what, the roadblock that we hit, and coaches understand this in their own life because they've gone through this. The roadblock that we hit is that you can have all the amazing tools, you can have all the amazing things in your life, but unless the internal environment is in harmony with the external, nothing works. And this is where we can actually coach people who are, I don't care if they're millionaires or billionaires or whoever they are, they have all the money in the world, they have all the power in the world, they might be completely broken inside of themselves. Or they might not have a concept of purpose. And their assumption was, if I get all this stuff, if I achieve this, I'll be good. But they get to that point and then they're like, oh shit, that was a really bad assumption. And now I can't go back. I can't get that time back. And these are the people who would give away all their money to gain an ounce of purpose, an ounce of peace, an ounce of happiness back.
Yeah.
So, and this connects with the bigger world. So collectively, as a species, and because the dominant collective thinking is that the material existence creates a better life, it's part of the equation. It's not the whole equation. And that's why I feel like and this is why there's been a huge surge of Eastern philosophy, Eastern wisdom. And it's like the two halves of the human brain connecting in a sense, that, hey, your internal world is just as important as your external world. If you're not connecting with yourself, your family, your community, none of the things that you're creating will mean anything. And you can't put it off 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, because those people are living in those times. They're not going to wait for you. And this is what and this is why I think it's coaches are probably at the forefront of this, because they understand that for them to create this change, they're going to have to start with themselves. They can't start with their clients. They can't start with their family and friends. They have to model that. And how we model that is by being open. And that's hard. And that's why it takes courage. It doesn't take tools. It doesn't take technical stuff. It doesn't take more resources. It just requires more openness. I don't know if that I went off on a tangent, but I feel like this was important.
Yes, you did, but it was amazing.
No,
You know, and to use it as an example that I think most of us can relate to, you know, when you go to a doctor's office and you sit down and, you know, you're having a conversation with the nurse, she takes your blood pressure, all of these things, and she's like, okay, you know what? Your cholesterol's high, your blood pressure's high, you're overweight. You know, we got to get this under control for your health, your long-term longevity. I'm going to bring the doctor in, and, you know, you're going to collaborate with the doctor on figuring out how you can have a better quality of life and live longer, because this is important, right? So you're sitting there, and then the doctor comes in, and he's a 300-pound man that smells like smoke. Are you going to listen to that doctor? Is that doctor have any significant level of credibility in your life? Because they're trying to sell you on doing things and making changes in your life for your own health when they themselves clearly don't believe what they're trying to sell. Same thing with coaching. And I think it's more nuanced and maybe a little less obvious than a 300-pound man that smells like cigarette smoke. But I think it still has the same effect, that we have got to be, you know, I've got to always be doing self-development on myself, because I don't know that I don't think I can take my clients any further than I've taken myself, or that I've gone. And I'm gonna limit my clients by my own limitations.
Absolutely. And to speak to both of you guys, the level that we're able to communicate this before and after in our own personal lives is one of the credibility builders of where we can take someone. We can also show the before and after for other clients, but that sometimes doesn't work in this emotional connection. Like, I want this person to understand where I'm coming from. As a potential client, I don't want to feel like, oh, judged, or this person. We're looking for teachers who can help us, but the ones that we like to choose psychologically are the ones that have been there before us. So first of all, they have more empathy. They know our difficult struggles. They're going to help the situation, the experience feels safer for us, but they are the literal evidence of, like, I was here and now I'm here. And it doesn't have to be 1,000 steps before us. It only needs to be one. More is fine. But when we don't share our story, when we don't share our difficulties and our struggles, we're just coming into this like, oh, I've been fit my entire life. Do you want me to help you get fit? You're like, you don't know how to lose weight. You've never had to lose weight. Like, a lot of people look at me and they're like, oh, I had a weight problem based on medication once. But if it's like, why those before and after pictures in fitness just go crazy, go viral, and are one of the lead validators that any fitness people use. Here's my clients before and after. Here's mine. That is the physical. Like Sherry said, the physical is easier to see, but with coaching, that's an internal mindset. That's personal development. You can kind of take a picture of someone before and after, and you might see a very different thing. Some of my old pictures back when I was in a bad marriage, unhealthy, like I was smiling on a tropical island, and you can see it all over my face. Like, does not look at all like happy, energized, like how my pictures, even just me at the park, are now. But it's so hard. You can't paint a picture visually sometimes in this journey of the transformation before and after. So in capturing, that's one of the credibility builders. So I think the 3 areas that coaches or entrepreneurs struggle with, but especially coaches, is again, that copywriting, the messaging. And then they really struggle with the visuals. That's hard. But the other part is the credibility. So we don't have, like in the fitness industry, here's like a before and after. You just need a picture. You don't have to say a thing. But here, everything is more internal transformation. So it is harder to communicate, and it is going to take more thought, a little bit more curation, and a little bit more planning in order to get those elements communicated to someone.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And here's the thing. This is like this connects so deeply with what if you're a coach who's passionate about what you're doing, it somehow connects with human transformation. You're helping your clients transform in some way. And what that means is that, and Sherry pointed that out, it's like, and same thing, we shared this in another podcast that Rich Lippin said, that you can't take clients deeper than you've gone yourself. And that doesn't mean you can't challenge people who've done well on the outside or anything like that. But internal world is a little bit different. An internal world, and this is why the assumption might be is, well, I need to be as successful on the external world, and this is where the nuance comes in, on the external world, to challenge my clients to be better. But that's not true. The external is usually not the problem. It's usually the internal, and I always make that distinction. They're both worlds. Our internal world is just as tangible, maybe even more than our external world. The problem is that we've lived through a few generations that have underemphasized the internal world. Like, oh, if you figure out all this stuff, you'll be good. And more and more people have disconnected, and people know this. People know this at some level. So when they hear your internal dialogue, when they hear your challenges, when they hear your emotions, when they hear your stories, there's a part of them that are like, I don't know why I need this, but I need that in my life. That's why what it makes it more tangible. This is why they see it through. And this is why when you get like, and this is why the thing that gives me a lot of hope a lot of times in the world that we're in, even though there's so many contradictory thoughts, challenges, people feeling different things, there's a lot of polarization with every kind of way of doing things. The thing that gives me hope is that when you see that somebody is being authentic, true to themselves, all of a sudden they get this huge support, no matter how contradictory it seems. And like look up somebody like Jordan Peterson. You might not agree with him at all, but look at what happened to his following, because he stood up for one thing. He stood up for one thing, and he stood up for, he's like, that's my free speech. This is what I believe. I don't care if the university is making me do this. I don't care if the media is forcing this on me. I'm going to stand for what I believe. And here's why. And I can't tell you how many clients, how many people I was like, oh, that person is so amazing. And there are parts of, and I think he's an amazing human being in that specific area. And I've listened to hours and hours of what he said to really figure out, like, what is it about him? And there are a lot of things I disagree with him. I think he's stuck in certain types of thinking, but there's something about him having the courage to express who he is that connects to our humanity. And this is the evolution of human beings, because we're all actually trying. There is no tribe anymore. There is no, oh, this is the religion you follow. This is the culture you follow. We're all trying to figure this out. We can all follow our own path, but then there is a common ground that we need to figure out. And you can't figure that out unless people are being authentic, and unless people are actually sharing what's in their heart and mind.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to be the same, but you can still connect.
Yeah, you can still connect. And where we're connecting is at the human level. And this is why I can pretty much work with people who believe anything, literally anything. I have clients right now that think completely the opposite of me in a lot of ways, but I know that that's all surface. As I go deeper into the human experience, I find that there are no differences. They have the same exact challenges as me. They have the same problems as me. They have the same aspirations as me. And when I say same, it's human aspirations. It's human challenges. And human challenges are identity challenges, emotional challenges, relationship challenges, vision, success challenges. These are the kind of things that people have challenges with. It doesn't matter what kind of model you have to fix that. It needs to make sense to you. You need to be congruent with that. And that has to come across in your messaging. And this also works with the other side of it. We haven't talked about it. Maybe Monica, you can elaborate on that, is that when we're talking about our authentic message, we're also repelling clients that we don't want. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
Yes. So I will start there. And then there's 3 awesome things that you hit on within that as well. So when we are creating a message, part of the thing Faisal said with what is his name, Jordan, making your stand. When you take a stand, when you stop being so neutral necessarily in your messaging, like you're a very spiritual person, but you want to keep spirituality out of your business. There's so many people, once they integrated spirituality into their business, any type of business, it went gangbusters. And they're like, well, I thought that was more niche. But when you create a stronger brand and clarity, you don't need a million people to have a successful business. But if you had 100 or 1,000 that are like, this is amazingly perfect and how I want to include this in life, even if you're in accounting, if you had a spirituality accounting kind of site, you're going to like attract people like crazy who are also interested in that. But it might not be just the spirituality aspect that attracts them. It's that, again, that difference. So when you take your stand, make your stand and make it clear and much stronger, then you are polarizing. So you want to push away anyone who's not a good fit. And I know that's really hard, especially when we're doing startups. When we're starting up, it is good sometimes to just take a lot of clients to learn what you do and do not want to work with and who you can serve best. But soon and quickly, I think that finding your kind of niche and literally using language in describing on your website, in your branding, in your marketing, that might detract those people who are not a good fit for you. And that is what is going to become more attractive to other people. When we are neutral, trying to please everyone, then we're not doing anything that's exciting for anyone at the same time. It's way too bland. The pretty and professional, it just becomes bland. You're absolutely forgettable and you're no longer incomparable to anyone. Like it's just, totally forget about this person. With other things Faisal said, the dialogue, the internal dialogue that we're using, when we communicate that, again, it opens up that vulnerability. But when we use words that we're using inside of our head, we create more of that polarity. One of the things that people do is they want to sound professional and they try not to sound too, I don't know what the word is, but let's say like our clients, what we're saying in our head when we're looking for any type of coach, it's like, I suck, I'm fat, I'm lazy. But like, if we don't talk like harsh and kind of inappropriate or unprofessional, those people are like, if we're like, oh, I don't have enough energy, like that's not how we talk to ourselves. Or, oh, I need to, trying to find some additional examples. When we make it too flowery, we're trying to be too professional in copywriting. We're like, nah, this person like doesn't really get me. And even though it's a little weird, it's a little quirky. Like if you're using the language I'm using in my head, like, damn, how did this guy read my mind? Like crap. Like, all right, then, yeah, this is what I'm looking for. So when we just over filter our words and our language, trying to not repel or, we're not strong in the repelling or attracting either way. But when we use words like, yeah, this sucks, or this is super frustrating, I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm like, when we use the language that people are actually using in their own dialogue, which when we use our own, it resonates with a lot more people. Like in our own head, we're using language that we might not be using language to describe. But as soon as we do, other people can connect because we are a little bit less filtered in our own heads. So being unfiltered, the internal dialogue, that's going to increase and decrease like the right polarity. And then Faisal was talking about personal development. I just wanted to do a really quick side note on that because there are so many clients that I've noticed, wow, these clients like rocked it. We really created a strong brand, amazing copywriting. I was trying to figure out like, how do I find more of those clients who can create this really strong emotional brand and are really connected to what they do? And then I've started figuring out, I'll be really excited about a client after a discovery call. And we start working together and it'll come out. They've had some level of therapy or coaching or like our personal development junkies. And I'm like, wow, the difference that makes in their approach, their ability to articulate, their ability to step in someone else's shoes and empathize, not even as a coach, any industry, as soon as they are able to do that, it's really amazing how more amazing we can create the brand and the messaging and how much more clarity we can find. So I like to try to find clients who are interested in personal development, have gone through coaching, because we can do some really deep work. I'm only working with people sometimes for 4 to 6 or 8 weeks. I can't do the, necessarily the months of coaching sometimes, but that's where brand coaching has come into play. How can we get deeper and find some more of this clarity that relates to their brand? But the more personally developed someone is, the more it flows, and like, we can just shoot for the stars. Not like, oh, here we get over here. It's like, no, we've got way over here. It's going to last them 5 to 10 years because we were able to go so deep.
So Gary Vaynerchuk is probably
That's what came to mind too.
Yes, like just say it the way that people think it, and it's
Yes.
like I think that's what he does. He's like so
Maybe there's some cuss words in there. Maybe there's like, but it might attract or repel people. Now, I'm not the biggest fan of listening to Gary V. I need to take him in small doses, but he is extremely motivating in some areas where it's like, speak it to me real. Like, it's entertaining, it's engaging, and it just cuts deeper sometimes. Now, that seriously, and he's talked about this, his use of language and his approach really turns a lot of people off. But there are enough people. There's always enough people, essentially, if you're clear on your message. When it's super muddy, there's never any like attraction going on there. Like, you're not going to get the followers. It's not going to grow. But when you just get in a trap and you write it out, those people are going to come to you. So there's enough people essentially for however it is you want to approach something. But yeah, some people don't like that. So the quiet, soft spoken, I've seen so many different, I love studying, I guess. As soon as I find somebody's ad on Instagram, sometimes I like click through, and some people have definitely sold me on some things, but they could be so quiet, soft spoken. And it's like, I still get engaged with this person because of that emotional, because of the depth, because of the understanding, the way they communicate. So it's not about the volume. It's not totally like Faisal said about the specific words sometimes, although that does help a lot. But again, it's that emotionality and the context of it. So we've focused a lot on like words and word use, but like Faisal said, it's sometimes in the body language, and it's a lot in the visuals. We're super visual human beings. And I think that's why people mostly approach me and say, oh, I need a good looking, professional, pretty website, is because visuals are first impression usually. Unless we're listening to a podcast, maybe we hear something first. Maybe the visual cover like helps, but podcasting is the exception here. For the most part, visually, when we meet someone physically in person, interact with their branding, that's why people pay a lot of money and spend a lot of time on the logos, the fonts, the colors, all of these things, because the first visual tells us a lot about someone. And when we have a brand that isn't very distinguished, that looks super cookie cutter or not even developed, it shows maybe a lack of dedication, a lack of thought, a lack of that professionalism I think people are looking for, is that proof that you are dedicated and that you are investing in this. You're not flim-flammy. You're not just getting started, like you're invested. So I think that's the visual piece there. But now what goes on the website other than just the copy? The photos. We have photos, we have video, and there's a lot of places that people struggle in, or even logo, like a logo design or a mark. People really struggle, but that is communicating something. And Faisal, we did some like color psychology, and he's like, oh my gosh, I can't believe you're going in there. Like, what does the color green, what does this color like represent and have a psychological effect on someone? It's accumulation. I think those are where all the subliminal things come together. You can land somewhere and have a feeling, and you're not exactly sure what the one thing is that's creating that feeling. But where coaches struggle a lot is within the photos. Sometimes we have just a headshot, or we have unprofessional photos. And in any brand, highly recommend like photo shoot, even if it's just a couple photos. That helps people connect with you. If we're hiding behind logos and stock photos, we're not creating that personal connection. We might have really amazing copy that connects, but if I can't see who's talking to me, it creates a distrust automatically. It's just a human nature thing. Doesn't matter how good of visuals you have if it's not you. So I really try to get people, and real estate investing, we'll use that as another example. I have many clients who are in real estate investing, and we have to build this credibility, because handing over $100 or half $100 or hundreds of thousands of dollars, I need to see who it is. And if I don't know this person, I can't trust this person. I need to know that there's a real person who cares about me behind this logo and this company I'm just throwing money at. So I've had to coach clients on, we need headshots on a homepage. And they will like fight me on it. Well, nobody else is doing this in the industry. I'm like, yeah, I have a list of 55 real estate investing sites that my assistant and I have put together so we can compare. And like 5 of them have headshots on their homepage. And it's like, we're missing a huge factor and ability to connect with people. So I will strong arm and twist some arms sometimes, like, we got to try this. And then they're okay, we'll be open to it. But the photos are huge. But the other thing that we run into is, okay, medical professions, this is strong with as well. We do need to focus on the pain point. The pain point is the catalyst. The pain point in the rock bottom is what triggers people to need to make a change, to invest time and money into coaches or brand coaches and designers and consultants. Like, there has to be a pain point first. But when we choose visuals, we need to address the failure, what's at risk. And we also need to address the problem that we're having. But one of the things that's really difficult to communicate that visually is then we choose images of people in pain, people hurting, people frustrated, or the medical profession, like people physically hurt. But just like I watch those psychology shows, how they know what areas of our brain activate, they flash a picture of someone in pain or spider. And then that fear part of the brain actually turns on just by having a flashed image of that item. So when we do that, we're triggering bad feelings and they're having a bad emotional experience on our site sometimes. So how do we paint the picture of where someone is and where they could be with visuals without actually triggering the negative emotions that they're already feeling? Because that creates a negative experience. It becomes uncomfortable. I don't want to be on the site. I don't want to follow the social media platform because I'm feeling more pain than I'm already feeling. So those are the things that are hard to navigate.
That feedback personally as well, because I've used some of those images as well. There are a couple of things I know we're coming up on the time, but I want to touch on a couple of things that you shared there. One, I want to give a caveat to coaches who are starting out. None of this should stop you from launching your website, and forget about all that stuff, like the complicated stuff, and definitely launch yours, even if it's a page to progress. And as a reference, I can tell you is that I've been in this business 5 or 6 years. Maybe I should have done it a couple of years ahead, but I've had consistent flow of clients just by having a page where they can go and fill out an application and connect it to a calendar. I didn't actually have like a full brand and everything else. I felt like I needed this more because I'm growing and scaling the business side of things more and more. The reason why I share this is that this can create overwhelm with a lot of coaches who are starting out. It's like, oh, I have to think about all these things. And it would for me when I was starting out. This is the time to focus on your skill development. This is the time to focus on your understanding of how, and this is why we're talking about sharing your vulnerable message more. And working on sharing who you are, your story, how you want to help people, what your message is, and all that stuff. Authenticity around that will be much more important than all the other like design, copy, and everything else that you can slowly start. And this is going to evolve your copy, and this is going to evolve your design as well. Would you agree with that, Monica?
Yes. And I'm really glad that you brought this up because I get just so excited about all the things and how far we can go and how deep we can go. And that's when I'm talking to clients who are going to work with me, like, here, let's do this together. One of my clients, she got at the end of it and she's just such a sweetheart and amazing. She's like, oh my gosh, I feel like we gave birth. Like, this is insane. This is so hard. She's like, we made it. I can't believe it. Here's my baby kind of thing. And then I'm like, okay, yep, this was great. Let me know if you have any questions. And then she's like, you're starting another client. I'm like, oh yeah, back to back, sometimes 2 at a time. She's like, how in the hell do you do that? Yeah. It is a huge amount of work. And the thing that I try to vet within my clients is when they're in their first years of business, I don't want to charge them and to do all this work because of that depth. That one-on-one time working with clients is where this clarity is going to come later. So take the pressure off of having to figure it out now. Do some work to actually create and start curating some of this story, and be intentional about sharing your vulnerability, about being true to yourself so you don't become disconnected and lose opportunities or have to fix and like redo and go back like, whoa, I went off on a tangent. That really wasn't me. It didn't feel right. But for me, I feel so much clarity around my podcast and everything. But now that I'm still trying to transition into the social media, I'm still in experimenting mode. I feel like I'm at square one, because as soon as I will show up and post something, it's not about the engagement, but as soon as I do, I'm like, that doesn't feel right to me. And so we need to do it first to know if it feels right sometimes. And we can do a lot of this work ourselves. I recommend reading Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. He also has like 2 really great talks on YouTube. One of them is about your one-liner. I seriously think you start there, you do that, like that's the piece you need. It can take 30 minutes, watch that video, write your one-liner, and everything else can kind of build upon it. And simple really does work. So when we found Faisal's website, I had a hard time digesting it, had a lot of content on it, and actually less can be more. We can do less and have a greater impact, because again, remember, a really short attention span, and all we need to do is just focus in on a few sections at a time of something you want to communicate, put them in the spotlight, just talk about their problems. I hear you. I understand you. I was there too. And then I'm a high performance coach. I can help you get here. A lot of people get really in the nitty gritty of like the how. Oh, we're going to do these 12 steps and I'm going to do this in a little, like, they don't necessarily need to know the how. They just need to know that you have a plan. You've been here before. And even if you've provided this and helped even one person and you've done it yourself, you're credible enough to go, essentially. So small pieces. Now, branding. I have met insanely successful people, monetarily or impact related, with no branding. It really can be simple. It's fun. It's fun. But the design, again, when people come to me for design, what they truly need is just clarity and message, clarity in how they approach their clients, knowing what makes them unique. Those are the things. The content section of the design usually takes the longest. It's like, okay, yeah, like technically I could go through designs and we could create that within a week, or I've done like 2 weeks even doing some content, but this deeper depth of what it is you want to communicate, what makes you different, how you want to approach these people. So I think journaling, but doing the story brand book will get you so much further, and it's going to help you build and move further in the process, but it can be really simple. Design wise, there are templates. There are website templates out there. The one thing I say, feel free to do it. If you know, like a color palette, just pick something and stay consistent. It doesn't matter what it is. It's fine. You can curate and change that later. Don't feel like, oh, I do this now I got to redo everything and I'm sunk deep. No, you can redo stuff. Don't feel like, oh, I've made this commitment. It's this huge thing. I have to make these big decisions on myself. Pick something that looks nice and resonates. But what is most important is that you have photos of yourself, that you're clearly communicating on it. So there's website templates. Canva has tons of templates for social media posts, logo creation. It really can just be text. A text logo is totally fine.
Yeah, and I love those tips that you gave at the end, because then it kind of like relieves the pressure of like, you don't need to figure out all this stuff now. Focus on your message, focus on the vulnerability part, focus on the simplicity versus all this complicated process, because it is complicated. I want to touch on one thing quickly, and then we'll go transition towards the last few questions we want to ask you, Monica. There was something I just want to, like, it's going to stay with me and it's going to eat me up. But it came up in our conversation. We talked a lot about filtering language. And that's not a random thing. This is a bigger part of the culture right now, because we're taught consistently from institutions, especially academic institutions, but news, media, everywhere. We're all taught to filter our language. And even as coaches who are aware of their thought process, they will miss this part a lot. They will filter their own language. I've done it. And I know many of us here have done it, even though you might not agree with what they're saying, because it's in the collective influence thought process. And I'll share with you a quick story. So I have a client who's a lawyer, and lawyers have to filter everything. So as I was doing these sessions, at some point I had to stop. I'm like, I can tell what you're doing. this might work in the courtroom and with all the lawyers and clients that you talk to, but filtering yourself, you're activating a different part of your mind. I don't need that right now. We need to go deeper, and you're blocking all of that. And then she just, I had to literally say it like that. And she starts like, yeah, you're right, I am filtering. But she wasn't aware of it because she does it every day, day in, day out. It's just part, even though she doesn't agree with it, just a part of her process. So the thing to be aware of is that filtering language doesn't allow, because when you filter, you're using a different part of your brain. You're not allowing yourself to be open. You're not allowed, it's not your language. It's the language that you're told to use. Now, there are some contexts where that applies, but for the most part, especially if you're being authentic, especially if you're trying to connect with people, use the language that feels consistent with you and with your client versus somebody who thinks, or some group that thinks that it's good. And this is a very easy thing to lose sight of. I think we can transition out of this. I wish we had more time to elaborate on that, but I just wanted to touch on it. Go ahead, Sherry.
Such good information. So we're going to shift to the last 4 questions we like to ask all of our guests. The first one is, you kind of already answered, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to have another answer. And that is, what is one of the most influential books in your journey as you've been helping coaches and other folks build their brand?
Okay. So the copywriting one I already mentioned. So Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller. And then I think what I have started shifting and doing throughout the past year was actually using the Enneagram. Because in personal branding, there's so much clarity we can get about like personality type assessments. So within the Enneagram, I like the book, The Road Back to You. It does have like a faith-based approach, but I think it works, and it shouldn't turn off anyone who might not necessarily be of Christian faith, but of Christian faith, it's a really great approach to the Enneagram as well. But yourenneagramcoach.com has, I think, one of the best assessments that I like. It is long, but it's really in depth. And I think that's one of those things that we need to do on our own if we don't have a branding coach or someone to help us reveal these things. So we can do some of these self-assessments to help pick out those things that are us. But I think I recommend that one because that one helps you see how your approach might be different and where some of your strengths lie in that personality. There's also the 16 personalities, which Faisal had reintroduced me to. I had found that one a few years ago. That one will help on like a scale of like introverted or extroverted. I feel so introverted and that's how I approached things. But when I did that, I'm like, okay, like maybe not as introverted as I thought, but those are the types of things that can help you build more of a brand voice and help you know what makes you unique in your approach. And that doesn't mean, oh, because I'm an Enneagram 5, a lot of my clients are actually Enneagram 8s. And supposedly that's one of the more rare ones. But within our industry, it's like those type 8s, those type 7s, those type 3s are, a lot of them are coaches. So I'm getting a lot of those types, but they still resonate with me. But I see that my Enneagram type helps me in my approach. So I show like the booky, the researchy, the, going deeper part of me. It all just really becomes an alignment and it helps me articulate it better. But to Faisal's thing, don't worry on like the articulation. Use the language that's naturally you, especially when we're first learning. We start over adopting everyone else's things. So I love the books, I love the seminars, but be careful when you approach it. Be intentional about what it is you want to learn out of something. And when we over digest, over consume, sometimes without the balance of our own journaling, meditation, and quiet time, it like starts overriding our brain. And that becomes the filter of how we speak, how we talk about our services when we over digest someone else's content. So I would also say open a book, but open your journal at the same time, because we need to have that balance of your own voice, not getting overridden by everyone else's.
Such a good perspective. And so Monica, as we've talked today about being authentic and vulnerable and letting people know a little bit about who you are, what do you like to do for fun? What are some of your hobbies?
When I'm not here at my desk, I do love to read, but I like to say that I am, how do I word it? I'm an adventurous homebody. So if you don't find me here, I want to be on a tropical beach. I want to be in the mountains. So I like snowboarding, kayaking, scuba diving, like all of those types of things. But yeah, I do love reading books, and I feel like I used to be in my arts. That used to be my side hobby so much, but my creative outlet through my work kind of fulfills that need. So although I don't paint anymore, I just definitely feel like the creativity is just a passion of mine.
That's awesome. And Monica, what do you see as separates successful coaches from the coaches that give up, that fail, or don't ever really kind of launch and get started?
Okay. Authenticity piece. So I think that the people who lose their passion, lose their way, have adopted and taken action based off of, again, they feel like they need to be something they're not to market their business. That killed it for me. Like within my first years, I was taking all these other courses of all these other side offers I needed to create, all these other funnels I needed to create, instead of actually focusing social media, creating a course, writing blog posts. All those things didn't actually help me in my business. If I had focused on what is really working for me, stop listening to everyone else. It was referrals. It was going on Upwork and proposing. It was working on my own portfolio. I let all that stuff slide because I was like, oh no, but I need to do this thing and this and this. So I think that for those who succeed and those who don't, is that they have been able to be intentional about using the information they get from the outside world in their research. And I'm like the researcher, number 5, like researcher. But what I had done, what made me essentially almost go to failure, is I over-researched. I felt like I needed to be doing too many different things. They spread themselves too thin, too many platforms, too many strategies. So being intentional, I need to focus on this area of my business. What can I learn to help me? Digesting that information intentionally, taking what works for you, knowing what works for you. Again, that very intuitive, knowing personal awareness, super key here. And then that putting those pieces together creates something new. When you've taken a piece here, not the whole thing, just one piece from this one person, one piece from this person, we've created like inventional thinking, and you've created something different than other people because you have different knowledge and experiences in different arenas. And that helps grow your business more than just placating, becoming a copy of all these other things over here.
Amazing. And as you coach your clients in building a brand, being more authentic, and you are also working with coaches such as Faisal, where do you see the field of coaching headed?
So I really love working with coaches. And if someone listens to this who isn't a coach, I love working with other industries as well. But what really excites me about the coaching industry essentially is that I feel like as a human race, we're on this precipice of needing to make a shift in our personal development evolution. And there's so many people, like we have this stronger struggle with the things that are going on in our world right now. And people are on this precipice of falling kind of into ruin, getting super stuck, and stepping up and feeling like that they can be themselves, pursue their dreams, and actually make it in a world where a lot of people are having experiences of lack, of pain, of suffering, of all of these things. But I'm seeing both. Like, it's so weird. Ever since 2020, I've started seeing like people going here darker and lighter. It's like the darker is darker and the lighter is lighter. And I feel like this wave of like, oh, now everyone's a life coach. Like, no, that's essentially what the world needs. Can you imagine if everyone increased their personal awareness and consciousness by 10%, like the entire world would change. And I feel like my work with coaches and helping them do their work and be successful is a win for humanity. Essentially, my work with someone to help them gain clarity and create some better conversions, feel more confident in doing their business is like just this effect that's going to ripple out into the rest of the world. So if I can help this one person, they can go help that 50 or 100. That 50 or 100 people are going to affect their entire family, all their coworkers. So it goes to thousands. Like, I feel like whenever I get a coach, I just get so excited. It's like, here's this like bigger rock I get to drop in like all of humanity. Now, no one might know, oh, it's because Monica did this little bit of branding and some brand coaching and help them. Like, doesn't matter. I just love seeing the effect. So the coaching industry, especially because we are going to remote working so much, I think the coaching industry is the catalyst for people. How do I say this? It's the catalyst for creating this world. I have a vision for this world and where I hope that it can go. And this is one of the ingredients. I think this is the main ingredient of us creating a more connected, unified humanity that's so much more self-aware and conscious.
Yeah.
If that answers the question, I think I went a little. I went a little.
That's such a powerful message. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you dropped so much valuable information, Monica, and coaches, I would highly encourage you to go back and listen to this again. I feel like this kind of reminds me a little bit like what people say about the Bible. Like when you read the Bible, you get out of it what you need depending on where you're at. Mm-hmm. So if you go back and listen to this podcast, if you implement some of these things, go back and listen to this podcast again in 3 months, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, there's this other thing now that I can focus. You're gonna learn some different stuff or recognize some different things you can do. So I would encourage you, go back and listen to this, take notes, listen to it again in 3 to 6 months. But because you provided so much stuff, Monica, what would you say, of all of the things, or maybe something different, what is like one major takeaway that this Coaches Nation can take away from this and do or be or something? Yeah. What would that be?
The one takeaway, I think, Sherry, it really stood out to you before, but again, shifting our focus from trying to be better than other people. I believe in death by comparison. That's essentially what had paralyzed me in my personal life as a teenager, all the way up into business. And it became even stronger as an entrepreneur, let alone a coach. So, knowing that and having faith that you already have what it takes and that you don't need to be something you're not. We just need to create more clarity and confidence around who you are and what it is that you have. So I think the one takeaway would be to further explore internally about what you have to offer and how you can communicate that. Learning about communication is key, whether it's visual or written. But it's that inner discovery, not this, I need to go out and learn the hundreds of different techniques until I find the one that works for me, because I can find 10 examples of every single type of marketing strategy, no matter how complete opposite they are, that has brought someone success. And the difference of why we've tried 20 marketing or 10 or whatever marketing strategies that aren't working for us is because we had approached it without that authenticity, or we were doing something that wasn't aligned with us. And then we're like, but it worked for this other person, but it's not, you're not showing up authentically in that because you hate writing or you hate getting on video. So it's not connecting with people. So we need to find the way that feels natural to you, that feels excited. But when I do that with clients, now this is where the brand coaching comes in. We do need to find what they're comfortable with and what their strengths are. But then as coaches, we know there needs to be certain transformation. So there might be something that you don't feel confident in doing now that you could love and be really good at if you're open to exploring and trying it first. I would have never said I wanted to be on video or be a speaker. Once I started doing that more and more, I built up the confidence. And now this is a way for me to creatively express. I feel like this is creativity for me. It's not drawing. It's not art. Like, yeah. This is amazingly creative. We're writing. Now I'm like, no, I feel more authentic speaking than writing before. So sometimes we need to try things in personal development first. But if truly something doesn't resonate, we need to know that and then find something that does and make it work for you, because it can work for you. There's a bazillion examples of it. So look for the examples of what you like to do working for you and stick within that, essentially.
Thank you so much. Good advice. Different, not better.
Yes, different, not better. And this is something that I have been trying to figure out how to serve more people in. So that's why I started my podcast on Authentic. So I can have and say all the things that come up in the coaching one-on-one calls, the discovery calls with the clients. Like I can talk about them out, share the stories and share them on the podcast to help people in that way. Calling my shot in the future, because of the people in that first year to 2 might not be ready for my one-on-one services necessarily. I'm hoping 2022 Yes, that year. Sorry, I forgot what next year is already. 2022, I want to have a recorded client process so that I have all the exercises recorded so people can do them on their own. So if someone's interested in more, but they don't necessarily want to have the dedication and time of working one-on-one with me, if you're over at authentic.com following my podcast, once those are done, then you can be in the know when that comes out.
Amazing. All right, Faisal, take us home.
All right. Well, I think that's Monica already shared where we can find her. And that's the main website as well, right? Authentic.
Authentic.com. Yeah. For my business services, my podcast, everything falls under that.
Yeah. So we'll put that in the messaging or caption, whatever we call it, underneath. This was really awesome. I love this conversation. Just want to thank everybody who was listening. If you're going to take away anything, take away something that you're going to actually implement in your business, not just keep it as a learning thing in your mind, in your head, but actually use it in your business, in your life, even if it's just that one thing. And that's where we would have served. And that's where you would actually create change in your life or in your business. Aside from that, make sure you like this podcast. Make sure you share it with other people. We're still working on setting up the rest of on the podcast platforms. We've had a lot of challenges, but we're on Facebook and YouTube right now. It's live every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Eastern. So you can watch this with us, or you can watch the recording afterwards. And make sure you share with any coach or any potential coach who wants to go into this world, because this might be the inspiration they're looking for. These might be the thoughts and the experiences that they're looking for to get started and feel inspired if they haven't started already, or a coach who's been in this world. And I'd love for you guys to share that. And if you want to be on this podcast, please reach out to us. And that's Sherry, you want to share how they can reach out to us?
Yes, you can reach out to us via email at support@coachingmasterycommunity.com.
All right, then I think we're good for this podcast. Thank you, Monica, for being here. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Take care. Bye.
Bye.
You too. Bye, guys.